you basically have Republican lawmakers who are trying to regulate trans kids' lives.
The single largest historical attack on trans people that this country has ever witnessed, by far. Anti-trans legislation has been moving at a record pace. We saw in the first 6 months of 2021, over 100 bills proposed and at least 13 passed. And this is not a phenomenon confined to one region. It may have started in the southern states, but by the end of this spring's legislative session, we saw bills tabled in well over half of all states. In some ways, this is an intensification of something that's been going on for at least 5 years.
So the Trump administration had targeted trans rights very aggressively across the federal government, banning trans people from the military, taking away trans protections in schools, in housing, in employment, and in other sectors. So when Biden came into office, he restored many of those protections. However, at the state level, GOP lawmakers are aggressively targeting trans rights through the introduction of new legislation that mostly targets trans children. The majority of these bills are targeting access to youth sports, many of them seeking to ban trans girls from participating in girls' sports. And what that means is that trans girls, if they want to participate in sports, would have to play on the boys' teams, which is not a viable option for most of these girls.
You don't want us running with the boys and not the girls, so what are we? Are we not human like everybody else?
On the first day of Pride Month, Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, signed a law banning trans girls from participating in girls' sports.
I can tell you this, in Florida, girls are going to play girls' sports and boys are going to play boys' sports. That's what we're doing.
So Republicans claim that the sports bans are meant to promote fairness in women's sports, essentially arguing that trans girls will have an unfair advantage if they're participating in girls' sports.
Can you give me one example of a transgender child trying to get an unfair advantage? Just one in your state. You signed a bill about it.
No, I can't really tell you one. I think we only have 12 kids, maybe in our state, that are transgender type kids. I mean, for crying out loud, Stephanie, I signed hundreds of bills. This is not a priority to me.
There is no widespread problem with trans people playing in sports. There never has been. There's no scientific data that would support the kind of fears that people are peddling.
We're all human beings, and at the end of the day, we just want to do the sport that we love.
Additionally, there are numerous bills that have been targeting healthcare access for trans kids.
Bills that actually ban, or in some cases criminalize, the delivery of gender-affirming healthcare to children. So that was what Arkansas passed. It was the first state to do so.
So they won't be able to access things such as puberty blockers, which temporarily pause puberty for younger teens, and then hormone therapy, which older trans teens use. But it will also strip care from these young people who are already receiving it now.
They're in a really hard place now, because their only option if they want to continue to access gender-affirming care is to move to a different state.
It's sad and it's frustrating knowing that a place that I've lived all my life is making it seem like they don't want me here.
So Republicans have argued that trans kids are a new phenomenon and that the treatments provided to them are experimental. These medications have been supported by major medical associations, have been used for a long time. So the claims that this treatment is experimental and new is just not true.
Trans children are hyper visible right now in our culture. They're everywhere. They're in the news, they're in TV, they're online, they're in film. But that new visibility is being taken as proof that they are new as a population of human beings. In reality, trans youth have a very long history. They've been around before we even had words to describe them. They existed before any of the medical procedures that were developed to transition.
It's clear that just the introduction of these laws has been really devastating for trans kids across the country who read the news and who see lawmakers, in effect, debating their existence.
When I see all these anti-trans bills and LGBTQ bills, it just tears me down.
These are people who think that me being trans is wrong. It's like, very personal.
This with anyone that had their treatment stopped, you would probably see like a lot of depression, a lot of suicidal thoughts in them. It's really hard to not get what you need when it's one of the things you need the most.
We've seen that trans kids suffer from extremely high suicide rates. Some studies have shown that 30 to 50% of trans kids attempt suicide. And experts believe that the climate right now is greatly exacerbating their mental health struggles.